lunchtime is the state of fishery management in New England, and I'm going to focus even in a few minutes on one aspect of that, and that's the groundfish fishery. On May 1st, we moved into a very different type of management called the catch share system. Before the catch share system, we had a days at sea management system. The days at sea management system basically managed the amount of effort that could be expended by the fishery, and near the end of the days at sea system, on the average, each boat had 20 days at sea that it could fish. And I think everybody here probably has at least intuitive feeling that 20 days is not a very good capital utilization, because most boats run 250 days a year. Another property of the days at sea fish system was that quotas were exceeded. Bycatch could be huge, and there was, in addition to overfishing, there was considerable underfishing. What I mean by that is, if you add up the total allowable catches for each year for the last several years, that it amounts to roughly 140,000 tons. But on the average, only 40,000 tons has been caught. So 100,000 tons is, you might say, wasted. And so that's really not a good property of the system, particularly when wasting 100,000 tons is equivalent to wasting $30 million at the dock, or maybe $1.2 billion by the time it gets out of the economy. So that's the days at sea system. So the catch share system starts out by allocating quantities of fish to sectors. These are groups of fishermen that have voluntarily organized to work together, and that immediately started a controversy, because there was a feeling that some sectors got more fish than they should have gotten. It's turned out, after a good 7 months into the system, that a small number of boats are catching most of the fish, and so that's basically what's called consolidation. That was somewhat true before, but it's shifted around and become more intense. One of the interesting aspects of the performance of this new system is that, in essence, the agency isn't monitoring the performance of the system. In other words, you launch this very significant federal effort, and then you don't keep track of it. And what I mean specifically by that is the only measures of performance that we have, except from talking to people in the industry, is revenues and catches. And the revenues have gone up somewhat, and people say it's a big success, but they don't have access to the cost data, which in talking to fishermen is tremendous. In other words, there's lease costs now, there's costs of observers, there's costs of new equipment, there's costs of sector management. The gross underfishing that I indicated before continues to exist. We're still catching about, we're going to do a little better, but not significantly, about 40,000 tons out of 100,000 tons. And
just for those who may not know what bycatch means, could you explain it to some
well,
people?
a good example is, I mean, there are many examples, but a good one is with yellowtail. Last year, under the days at sea system, the fishery caught 6,000 tons of yellowtail and had to throw 3,000 tons back in the water, basically wasted. And the reason is, just to give an example, I don't know the exact numbers, you can catch, say, 400 pounds a trip. So the first day you're out, you catch 100 pounds. The next day you're out, 100 pounds, say it's a 4-day trip. You have 300 pounds on the fourth day, you put the net back down, and you catch several thousand pounds. And so now you have to throw all of that fish back. And so there's a tremendous amount of fish wasted with bycatch. That is masked under the days at sea system. We don't know how that's going to work out. So I think it's fair to say that apart from the people who were limited in and obtained a windfall profit as being limited in, that there's widespread dissatisfaction with the system. And this is particularly true, as I say, with the fishermen are limited out. The leasing program generates an exchange of value between the captains and the owners, but basically the crew is laid off or fired, and so that increases welfare costs to the communities. So it's arguable that the days that the catch share system is no better than the days at sea system, and people go back to the 20 days at sea and say how untenable that is. That is untenable, but if the arguments about increased catches obtained, then we would have had more time it would have slowed down the process and had more time to properly implement the catch share system. So how did we get to where we are, and what are we doing? First of all, the take-home lessons started out with the wrong fundamental premise. There's a lack of planning and analysis and premature implementation. The intent of Congress was flaunted, which makes it difficult to operate. And there is inflexible interpretation of scientific calculations. So the wrong fundamental premise is that the things that you read about catch shares is that they were really better than ice cream. They were really good for everyone. They're obviously not good for the crew that gets laid off or the people who don't get an allocation. They're portrayed as a significant conservation tool, yet the real conservation issues relate to how many fish you catch, not who gets what. They're billed as beating the race to fish, and so basically in some circumstances that's true, but in general that's not true. For example, if you have 10 pounds of fish and I have 10 pounds of fish, then we're equal. But if I get there before you do, the cost of my catching those fish is going to be less than yours. So I continue to want to race for fish even though I'm allocated a quantity of fish. And the mantra is that well-designed catch shares systems are beneficial to society, and the word is well-designed. The point is that the well-designed should occur before the catch share system is implemented, not after. And so a lot of problems that we see with the operation of the catch share system, which basically isn't, the property rights isn't necessarily a bad idea, owes to the fact that it's being conducted in a cut and paste manner. The lack of planning and analysis, how are we doing, Shadi? Yeah, lack of planning and analysis is really most reflective in the fact that basically only one alternative was considered, and the National Environmental Policy Act challenges agencies to present several meaningful alternatives with careful analysis. And finally, the mixed species problem, which is particularly difficult to manage, was not addressed. In other words, we went from the days at sea to the catch share system without taking into account this mixed species problem, which we all knew we had. With respect to the intent of Congress, the Magnuson-Stevens Act says that no fishery management provision shall have economic allocation as its sole purpose. In this case, it's really hard to argue that there is some other purpose to the catch share system other than economic allocation. The law says that if we go into a system like this, ITQ system, we should have a referendum among the fishermen, and through a modification of semantics, that wasn't prosecuted. National Standard 8 says that says that the fishing management needs to take into account the economic and social condition of the fishing communities. And as we can see by the fact that this is not even being monitored, that hasn't been done. And National Standard 4 talks about the fair and equitable allocations, which again is a part of a lawsuit that's coming up. The scientific calculations are also being challenged because basically, and this gets more from policy into implementation, but the allocations are basically supposed to be based on maximum sustainable yield. Instead, they're based on proxies. The proxies are generally less than a maximum sustainable yield, and so that adds a buffer for uncertainty, and then another buffer for uncertainty is added onto that. It's a beautiful example of lack of planning and analysis, because the actual determination of structural uncertainty in these fishery management plans is extremely difficult. And finally, a lot of emphasis is played on the peer review process as looking toward the truth in everything that's done. And this is really a false idea, because basically the peer review process arose when you write a paper, you send it to somebody to a peer, and they anonymously review it and they send it back. Here we have groups of people that are making major decisions, and stock assessment isn't easy. We all make mistakes, and so the peer review process covers up those mistakes. So what's happening next? In a way, a lot of these things are now becoming irreversible. As Professor Bosso indicated, the governor sent a letter to Secretary Locke looking for increased catch limits and economic relief. The secretary sent back a reply. I call it a reply, not a response, because really didn't address the specific points that the governor raised. There's litigation that's moving along, and we're waiting to see what happens next. So I would just summarize this by saying that we moved into a new fishery management system on May 1st. The system had a lot of potential among alternative systems in terms of how you create property rights, but the implementation went so far afoul of dealing with people on a level playing field, flaunting the intent of Congress, and not fully exploiting our scientific understanding of the fishery process, that we have to seriously think about next steps.
Well, thanks, Professor Rothschild.